Good afternoon. Can I welcome you all to today's council meeting? Please note this is an extraordinary council meeting. Some of the usual standard items such as consideration of minutes are not included in the meeting today. Moving on to the agenda. I received apologies from absence from I. David Biffle, Mike Davis, Emma Holland, Beverly Parry Jones, Ronnie Prince, Rondo Roberts, Paul Rogers, Debbie Wallace, Kate Wilkinson, Nigel Williams, and Claire Lovett. Are there any more?
Councillor Ross Shepherd.
Any more? Item agenda 2, declarations of personal interest. Do any members have any personal interest to declare in respect of the business before council today? Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I've submitted a declaration of interest form for personal but not prejudicial.
Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, I've done like that.
Personal non-prejudicial. Thank you.
Are there any more?
Personal non-prejudicial.
Next, for online. It doesn't appear to be any online. Okay, item agenda 3, adoption of local development plan. The Chief Officer for Governance and Customer will introduce this item.
The report this afternoon is regarding the court order made on the 29th of November against this council. It's not regarding the merits or the contents of the LDP itself. The court order on the 29th of November quashes the no votes made on the 19th of April and the 14th of June this year. This means that those decisions by council are set aside and they have no legal force. As a result, the judge has directed council to reconsider the matter and reach a decision in accordance with the judgment of the court. In doing that, the judge made it clear that only a resolution to adopt the LDP as modified by the examiners would be in accordance with the judgment. In my role as monitoring officer, I am responsible for the lawfulness and fairness of the council's decision making, and we collectively as officers and councillors have a duty to uphold the law, and democracy is not above the law, as demonstrated by the court order made against this council. Therefore, I am asking for the recommendations in 3.1 of my report to be considered this afternoon.
Okay, do we have a mover?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't intend to say too much. The extract from the court judgment is quite clear, which is namely only a resolution to adopt the LDP as modified by the examiners would be in accordance with the judgment. Now, I realise there are councillors who are not happy with the plan or in its contents in full or part, and there are elements that I don't sit too comfortably with me either. But I was prepared to support the plan for examination in public in the full knowledge that the inspector's report was binding in accordance with the legislation. The democratic decision was taken at that time, and the matters arising changes which came as a result of the inquiry were advertised for consultation and responses considered. The significant factor which has changed from when we put forward the plan is the Welsh Government's withdrawal from the A483 improvements, which again the inspector has taken account of. We now have a court judgment on the judicial review, which is clear and unequivocal. I therefore move the recommendations in 3.1, A, B and C.
Do you have a seconder?
I second the recommendations 3.1, A, B and C to ensure this council complies with the instruction of the court and the court orders 1 to 8 as listed on page 4 of this report. Due to past actions, this council and we, as elected members, are now accountable to the court. The legal judgment on the 29th of November has made our statutory position and individual legal responsibilities very clear regarding this matter. I am also moving a recorded vote, and Mr Mayor, I reserve the right to speak on this motion. God allow.
Okay, are there any speakers? Okay, I will bear in mind my rule, 5 minutes, and then you'll have to stop. So, Councillor Rob Walsh to start with.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, what a choice we have here. Basically, if we vote against, we're in breach of a court order, and no one wants to do that. We all respect the law, but if we vote for it, some of us will go against very strongly held beliefs, and what's worse, go against what some of our residents actually asked for. But I accept that this afternoon the LDP is going to be adopted. I don't think there's anything we can do about that. I think this is the end of the road as far as the LDP is concerned. But I don't want to concentrate on that. I just want to concentrate on the democratic aspect. Courts overruling democratic bodies is nothing new. We see it all the time. How many times has the UK government been overruled by a court? Even the President of the United States, allegedly the most powerful person in the world, gets overruled by their Supreme Court in the US. So this is nothing new. But what is new, and this is what spoke to me, is that we're being forced to vote against our beliefs, what some of our residents want. And this should never be allowed to happen again. So I do hope, if one thing comes out of this, that it's looked at. So either in future, something like this gets just imposed on us, as unhappy as it makes us, or we have a free vote. We cannot have this situation where elected members are effectively being forced to vote against their beliefs. That is very, very dangerous to democracy, and it's also dangerous to the public's confidence in democracy. So, whatever way members vote to do votes, I do hope that there is no witch hunt against any elected members. We've got to draw a line under this today and move on. But it is important to say, elected members haven't voted against this simply because they want to be awkward. It's just, as I keep saying, it's because of their beliefs. Some are actually elected on the basis that they vote against the LDP because this is very, very unpopular amongst the residents of Wrexham. So, even though it's going to get adopted today, I just really want to send a message, particularly to the residents who've come here today and the residents who might be watching on the screen, that I'm sorry it's ended this way. We can be proud of the campaigns you fought to try and stop this LDP, but some of you battles will still continue. You'll have minor battles going on after this. But I do want to finish on, I know the national media will be watching this, and I'm sure this will be widely reported across the country. But I don't want you just to report on what's happened today. Think about what's happened over the past 6-7 years. There are plenty of people here from all walks of life who've got their story to tell. So I hope the national media do take time out and speak to all those involved and build a picture, and therefore you'll see how we've got to this moment in time. The open round, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. Can I say, do reserve the right to come back? This is a question for the monitoring officer so we can have clarity in this chamber this evening. I think it's so important that before we take a vote, we understand the consequences of our actions as elected members in this chamber, and I think that's so important. There's been a lot of emails circulating, there's been unanswered questions. I've spoken to the Chief Exec, I've spoken to the monitoring officer, and I really don't understand that they'll speak to it verbally, but they won't confirm it in an email. I struggle with that, I really do as an individual, and that sets a precedent and that concerns me. But I do respect the officers who have replied with that reply. But for me, it doesn't sit well. So what I'd like to do is to ask a question to the monitoring officer, because there's been a lot of things said on social media and it's out there, and obviously been said by our officers as well. If we vote against this afternoon, are we going to go to jail? What are the consequences of it? Because that's what's out there in the public domain. Also, if we abstain, what are the consequences of our actions here this evening? Because I believe, and Councillor Rob Wells just touched on it, democracy is at play here, and I understand the law and I understand democracy. But what concerns me is that the consequences, because I'm not going to discuss the LDP that's been discussed at the last two meetings and over the last 5 or 6 years, but I really want to understand before I make a decision here in this chamber, and I speak on behalf of lots of members, and obviously there's a lot of members here who are not here, who have given their apologies because, and these are their words, not mine, fear, intimidation, threats, to feel pressurised. And I think that needs to come out in this debate today. For me as an individual, what are the consequences? So I would like clarity. I've asked the question and I would expect a reply. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I do reserve the right to come back into the debate later. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll make it clear and I'll spell out first of all, if there is a yes vote, then it is unlikely that there would be any further court proceedings. The council would not be in contempt of court, and therefore it's unlikely to be any proceedings in relation to members who vote against the LDP or abstain this afternoon. There would still be a potential for complaint to the Ombudsman if anyone, including members of the public, felt there was a breach of the Code of Conduct by members. If there is a no vote, the case will undoubtedly return to court, and the consequences of that will be increased court and legal costs. There is a potential for contempt of court. Such orders have been made against councils before now. There is also a potential for the judge to hold to account individuals who vote no in breach of the statutory obligation to adopt the LDP, but that is unknown territory. There is unlikely to be action in that situation against those who abstain or are absent. And again, there is potential for complaint to the Ombudsman for breach of Code of Conduct, as I mentioned before. Yeah.
Okay, next to speak is Councillor Robert Ian Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I speak as an individual because in the Conservative group we all voted as individuals.
Can you put your speaker on, please?
Good afternoon from Handdown, Mr. Mayor. I speak as an individual because in the Conservative group we've always preserved the fact over this issue that members speak individually, and we were not forced to vote for or against the LDP. I have reservations, but I bow to the rule of law because the rule of law is essential in keeping democracy. It stands there as a bulwark against false interpretation and what effectively would be mob rule. So I'm voting this time for the LDP because I respect the rule of law and the judgment of the court. And I'd just like to say, as a tribute to one person in this chamber, to our monitoring officer who stood stalwart through all this and has given clear guidance and has suffered in the face of criticism and scurrilous attacks. I pay tribute to Ms Roberts, and I urge all my fellow councillors to vote yes and observe the rule of law. If Rishi Sunak has to bow to the rule of law and Boris Johnson had to over the proroguing of Parliament, we should have the courage of our convictions to vote yes for this. Thank you.
Dear Mr. Mayor, like Councillor Pritchard, I'm not surprised to see some empty seats in the chamber tonight. This is the third time that we've been asked to come here and vote for a housing plan that the majority of us do not support. And I know for a fact as well there are councillors who aren't here tonight because they're afraid of the repercussions of coming here and opposing that plan. It's a plan that's going to make developers hundreds of millions, but at the same time it's going to eat up our green fields, coalesce our villages, damage local identity, and put a huge amount of pressure on local services and local infrastructure as well. But don't you dare vote against it. This isn't a free vote because we've all effectively got a gun to our heads because we've been told we could face prison, we could face a fine, we could face the seizure of assets or ombudsman complaints if we don't vote for a plan that we know most local people do not support. The Welsh Government legislation that underpins all of this is literally criminalising the democratic process. What's happening here is thoroughly undemocratic. It's an affront, I would say, to democracy, and it's precisely why the Welsh Government should have stepped up when they were formally asked to intervene after the first vote where we rejected this plan. Because we all know they've got the power to intervene all the way up until the time that the plan is adopted. They were asked to do that. They were asked to work with councillors here to find a way forward, and yet they refused. They refused because they don't want to be accountable. They refused because they know politically this is extremely damaging for them, and most local people are against it, and they cannot justify this plan on any level. The Welsh Government are basically in hiding over this. They have dodged the discussion, they've avoided accountability, and that, to me, I find unforgivable. Because whichever way you dress this up, this is not a local plan. The housing numbers that we know, all of us know, are wildly inaccurate, come from the Welsh Labour Government. The planning inspectors, which report to the Welsh ministers, cut the affordable housing threshold to just 9% in this plan. Current Welsh Government policy is 53%. Wrexham is being forced to basically take on a plan that is in contradiction to current Welsh Government policy, whether that's Future Wales 2040 or whether it's the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And to top it all off, the Welsh Government have also reneged on a statement of common ground which would have secured funding for improvements to the A483, which basically makes one of the key sites in this plan undeliverable. Yet we are being told by the Welsh Government that this plan is sound. It quite clearly isn't. And what have they got to say about all of that? Absolutely nothing. Dim bead, radio silence. This is Labour's development plan. They back it and the developers back it. The Plaid Cymru will not be supporting it today.
Thank you. Councillor Becca Martin.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. We're elected by our residents to represent them, to work in their best interests. And when they vote for us in these polls, they put in their trust in us as elected members to do this. Here, today, under the threats we've received, we're effectively being forced to vote in a way that does not represent our residents and will be more detrimental to them than beneficial. This vote completely throws our political freedom, and the door this opens, frankly, leads us to a terrifying place. It is a sad day for democracy here today. Thank you.
Councillor Mark Jones.
I'm not going to repeat some of the comments that have been made, but I would ask the question, who benefits from this LDP? I think we're clear that the people who benefit from this LDP are the large housing developers who took this council to court. The losers are the people who will have to suffer the consequences of this LDP for decades to come. Decades to come. This will change Wrexham forever. I think we need to be clear about what we're losing. We're losing green fields and the concrete. We're losing playing fields under tarmac. We're losing identity and community as town and villages coalesce. We have to be very clear that this is going to further overstretch services such as health, education and our infrastructure, which is already creaking. And I agree with Councillor Harper. The Labour government has ducked responsibility on the LDP. It could and should have accepted the democratic vote back in April and entered into further negotiation to find a suitable solution that worked for Wrexham. It chose to hide behind the developers, and it's been an unholy alliance supported by others. And there'll be some people in this chamber, and I agree with Councillor Walsh, there'll be some people in this chamber who will feel that this will go through and it will be a victory. It will be a hollow victory, I tell you. The people of Wrexham will judge for themselves who are the winners and the losers in this all. And we're going to see very soon what impact this development will have, this LDP will have, what added pressures it will put, because there are developments of hundreds of homes coming before this council in the next month that will see greenfields being under threat. We will see communities that are already struggling to access a GP having to put up with greater pressures. And we will see it here that health boards' concerns about their ability to serve those communities are not relevant planning grounds. That's what this vote today means. Be in no doubt, this is an incredibly important vote, and we are not having a chance to vote for it in the way we would like to. It's a bad day for democracy. And this group won't be part of that undemocratic farce. We've made our case consistently over the past decade on this issue. We voted against, as a group, we voted against sending this out to examination because we knew this was a bad plan for Wrexham. In 2020, we were misinformed about having a further opportunity to vote. And now we're having to accept that if we vote in a certain way, we have to vote in a certain way or we face the most serious of sanctions. So as a group, we're not going to grace this vote with our presence. We're now going to leave and take our place where we feel we belong, with the people of Wrexham opposing this plan. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So much information banging around and has been banging around since April that, to be frankly honest, I am very much losing my patience. We're here today because of an unlawful decision that was made by this council back in April in answer to the statutory duty that this council should have undertaken. So it's about upholding the law. It could be about anything. We have various statutory responsibilities covering social services, safeguarding, education. We've set the precedent now in this council chamber anyway, where elected members are willfully, consciously, knowingly and intentionally voting unlawfully. And that's why we are sat here today. And a number of members have not shown their face or walked out of this chamber because there is other reasons that they are looking towards, or excuses that they are looking towards, instead of making their statutory, instead of complying with their statutory duty. It's been talked about we've had 3 votes in this council chamber. 2 of those votes were at the direction of the court because the original vote in April was unlawful. So the courts have brought us into this room today, and we brought us back in June as a test. But councillors chose to vote unlawfully there as well. So it's not about guns to your head over an LDP, it's about voting lawfully. It's about basic, lawful decision making. That's what today is about, and we can't even get that right in this chamber. There's talk about Welsh Government legislation. This isn't Welsh Government legislation. This legislation applies to the UK as a whole. It is the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act of 2006. I believe Part 6 references Wales. So it's legislation that is UK-wide. The housing predictions, I've been sat in a meeting with Councillor Mark Jones, and Councillor Jeremy Newton was in that meeting, where Welsh Audit Office was explaining that the LDP isn't found sound based on predictions, it's the methodology and the formula that the inspector tests. And I've got to give credit to Plaid Cymru, they've certainly done their homework on legislation, not, because on that basis, they don't even understand that if Welsh Government wanted to impose an alternative decision on this council, they would have to go to court themselves, because it's their civil servants' professional opinion that the LDP for Wrexham is sound. So they would be going against their own professional civil servant opinion, and they would have to go to court. So the whole misinformation about what's been going off in Wrexham since April, and I'm going to challenge Councillor Bob Walsh, because he did make a comment about elected members. I am of the view that elected members, for how they have acted since April, should be held to account. And on that basis, the legal group have taken barrister legal advice opinion through the LGA, the Local Government Association, since all this started. And that has been at no cost to Wrexham taxpayers. Because the LGA, we're all individual members of the LGA, you can go there for your legal advice, you can ask them for their opinion on what contempt of court means, and we're all responsible for that as individual elected members. The legal officer can give you her opinion, but ultimately today we are answerable to the court. And I hope the court enact that duty they've got of additional court powers, because we are stuck in a rut now with unlawful decision making in Wrexham. You'll come out with things from there. Thank you.
Councillor Malcolm King online.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, as many of you know, I work with young people, and my advice to them always over the last 50 years or so has been that they need to obey the law, otherwise you get into a lot of trouble. Wrexham Council, I think most councillors probably don't really appreciate it. Wrexham Council is a major law enforcement body. We have scores of laws, public health, training standards, social services, highways, all sorts of laws that is our duty, our primary duty to enforce. The idea that we're setting an example to young people and the rest of the population that we can pick and choose which laws we obey, and when we decide, oh, we don't really like them, we're going to call it democracy and break them. I mean, it's a shameful type of example to give. I think anyone who goes down that ridiculous route should feel ashamed of themselves, frankly. I would like to know from the leader of the council who said that members, because this is very serious, members are suffering threats and intimidation. But I'd like to know where from, because that's a very serious issue. And of course members shouldn't be threatened and suffering intimidation. But I took that to mean that they are being intimidated by the judge, or is it by our own senior legal officer? Because that would be a fairly serious charge. So I would like to have it very clearly from the leader of the council, having made that very serious charge, that he explains it. Where is that? Where are those threats, intimidation coming from? I would have liked to have asked Councillor Harper when she said that most local people don't support this plan. Well, I have no idea where she gets that from. Does she mean most means over 50%? So is she saying that she has knowledge that we don't have, that at least 51% do not support this plan. I've got no idea where she's very good at coming up with populist type of phrases, but that does need to be examined, because I don't think there's any evidence to support that we have a knowledge that most local people don't support this plan. I'd like to just also take issue with Councillor Davis has already mentioned this. This is UK legislation, it's not Welsh Government legislation. They do not have the power to change it. And it's been going for years and years, and we're the only council, as I understand it, and I'd like to check on this. So one of my questions is, are we now the only council in the whole of the UK not to pass a local development plan up until now? If that is the case, what makes us so different? I mean, the point has been made several times already at the previous debates that we had a chance to object to this, and Mark Morrison said this before it went in. A lot of people have claimed they've been misled and so on. It's our plan. We put it forward as a council to say this is our plan, and then at the last minute, for some seems to me spurious reasons, we suddenly decided for populist reasons to pull out of it. Well, your word is supposed to mean something. If you agree something, you then don't change your mind and make a big hoo-ha that you're supported by democracy to do it. No, it's not. It's just inconsistency and providing a veil to break the law. So I would like some answers to those questions. And I've got to say, along with Councillor Davis, what a load of misinformation. It's just a cover-up, providing some sort of a smokescreen for having got this horribly wrong, didn't understand what they were doing, and then wanting to blame everyone else. I mean, it's really shocking. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Wynne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Back in April and June this year, I spoke on this issue. I've reflected on what's transpired since June. And in essence, I'm Wrexham born and bred, and I want the best for the people of Wrexham. And that requires development, because no town or city or hamlet can stand still. And therefore development is required. We've had excellent news recently off the UK government that they want to invest in Flintshire and Wrexham in an investment zone, and that will require people from out of Wrexham coming and settling in Wrexham and taking those jobs up, as well as those jobs being available for the people of Wrexham. And there has to be good news for the people of Wrexham, because we've had news today that the settlement for local authorities in Wales, throughout Wales, is not good news, and in Wrexham we're probably facing a £20 million cut in our services going forward next year. So whatever we can do to improve the life chances of the people of Wrexham, we have to grab with both hands. So I've said it previously that I do welcome, like every other authority throughout the United Kingdom, to adopt a local development plan that gives assurance and consistency of basically we are open for business in Wrexham, to invite businesses to come and set up here. So my decision to support the acceptance of the LDP hasn't changed, but I must admit, as a ward member who's heavily impacted by the proposed key stage site development on Rithing Road, having closely analysed what's going on and challenging that planning application that has been submitted in advance of us adopting this local development plan, is that I think the inspectors that actually approved the local development plan as sound, i.e. Sean Warden and Militia Hill, did so with tongue-in-cheek, because they did say, in connection with that particular development, that the value and robustness of evidence is in significant doubt. They also went on to say that the robustness of the evidence we as a local authority through our officers presented when they were doing the review of the local development plan said, in the light of the paucity, which is the lack of evidence to the contrary, we have to agree with the developers' proposals rather than the arguments we as an authority were making inefficiently through traffic consultants that we presume pay good money to employ to defend that case. So my hope is that the local development plan is accepted today, but obviously the challenge and the fight does not finish there. It is up to us as members to obviously challenge planning applications as they come in and are considered by the planning committee, and I hope that we collectively can challenge where developments are coming forward which, for whatever reason, are not good news for the people of Wrexham. So thank you for that.
Yeah, Councillor Brown. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've heard, as we all have, lots of comments about this being a bad day for democracy. I want to add my voice to the fact that I also believe it's a bad day for democracy. When people cite it's a bad day for democracy on the back of the fact that we're here to make a lawful decision and undermine the principles of democracy that are so firmly based in law. We are elected, and I feel very strongly a personal connection and a personal responsibility. I was elected in Brumbo because the Boundary Commission said it deserved and warranted 2 councillors. I stood on a platform of tackling misinformation and anti-democratic practice. I stand here very proudly trying to encourage others that feel really conflicted about today's decision, as they were in June, as they were in April. I felt conflicted. In April, I voted against the LDP. I feel very strongly that it is a flawed document, but it has been determined in a lawful process as being adoptable, and we are compelled to adopt it. In April, I didn't like that. I voted against it. In June, I read the report that was presented. I heard and listened to our senior officers. I took their advice. And this is crucial, I changed my mind. A sad day for democracy is when people continue with a dogma of refusing to change in light of the facts of the situation. If I'm here for one purpose and one purpose alone to represent my people in Brumbo, it is to be listening more than talking, to bring some intelligence and understanding to a situation that is emotive, but to do the right thing. Any sense that I was pressured as a Labour councillor through a whipping exercise to change my mind is completely unfounded. And rather, my standing up now is to encourage anybody else who is feeling conflicted still and is concerned about the consequences of changing their mind, both with their electorates, who might take a view that this is a sign of weakness, or within group and a group pressure at any time. That sort of pressure is palpable, it's very strong, it influences us all, and it weighs heavy on our minds. I want to stand here as an example of courage in the face of rubbish being touted about the process that we have in front of us today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan Ashley. Are there any more speakers after Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How do I follow that? I was a member of the Planning Policy Panel. I attended many public examination meetings. I don't like some of the things that's left in the LDP, but I'm one that believes that's too long. I want to seek assurance from the Chief Officer regarding the timetable for developing supplementary planning guidance which underpin the LDP. As the work of elected members, in this process needs to move at a considerable pace. Can you answer that for me, please?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Apsley. Although we've been waiting for the LDP to be resolved, we've been working on, in the background, supplementary planning guidance preparation. So we anticipate coming and reconvening the planning policy panel within the next 6 weeks or so to scope out the works and to agree a programme of delivery. So I hope that that gives you some assurance.
Councillor Trevor Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Merry Christmas, everybody. I'm not sure we'll have a happy new year, but there we go. We've heard about prison today. I already feel like some of my freedoms have been taken away from me by this ruling that I haven't seen it yet, actually. I understand that a court somewhere has decreed that Wrexham Council must adopt the local development plan. I've not been shown any legal documents, and I don't believe I have sufficient evidence to convince me to vote for something today which I don't think is the right thing for residents of Wrexham. I've got two questions. One is, do we need to vote if a court has already declared that we must adopt it? It seems a silly process that doesn't need to happen. Second question is, why am I being asked to vote before hearing which court it was decided at? I believe it was in Cardiff, but I don't know. I haven't had sight of the judge's ruling, and I don't think it's going to come out for some time yet. I don't even know who exactly took Wrexham to court. I'd love to hear the answer to these questions. Lastly, I'd like to propose deferment until such information is available to us, because I don't think, I can't vote one way or the other today, because I don't feel I'm adequately informed. Presently, I feel like a turkey voting for Christmas, to be honest. It seems that a group of development companies are ruling the country, but I'd like to answer to those questions, and I'd like to formally propose that we, in the absence of actually seeing the legal document and the reason behind it, I'd like to propose that we defer this until such time as it's available. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, point of order, please. I understand, and by way of public explanation, I understand that the court, as part of the judgment, the court instructed this council to call an extraordinary meeting by the 14th of December for us to consider the court's judgment at the latest by the 2nd week of January. I don't understand how a deferment of what we're here to do today, which is to discharge our statutory duty, how that deferment is not going to put us back in court at further cost to the taxpayer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Linda?
York. Yes, as I've set out in my report in paragraph 4.1, the terms of the order made against this court. Yes, in time we will actually receive the words of the judgment, but the judgment itself, we don't need to see the detail of today. I am informing you, of course, that the order has been made against this council and we need to comply with it. There is absolutely no point in deferring this matter. All that would achieve would be adding further costs incurred by this council. We have the court order in front of us. I have received that as the senior legal officer of this council, and I need to ensure that we comply with it. Deal.
So in the process of what I have to do we have a seconder? No, so that's fallen, so we'll continue. Are there any other speakers? Okay, Councillor Paul Watkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I kindly ask for a short recess for 5 minutes, please, so I can discuss with my group?
Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes. Back in here 20 past, please. 5 minutes. Yeah, we'll do that when I've done all the speakers. Then we'll come back up. We'll do the recording vote then. Okay, 5 minutes. Stop. 20 past, I want you back in here. My 5-minute rule applies. Okay, please be seated. Okay, what's Councillor Pritchard, because he's next on the list to speak.
I think he went to the toilet now.
Okay.
We're back now.
Five minutes, Mr. Pritchard. Councillor Pritchard, you're next to speak.
Mr. Mayor, I do apologise for being a little bit late. I thought we still had a minute, but there you are. Conscious of your 5-minute rule, Mr. Mayor, I respect it. But I thank the legal officer for the advice she gives at the start of the meeting. Just touch on some things quickly. I do support Councillor Trevor Pitts with regards to the information. I do believe the court order, the papers, etc., they're public documents and I think should be shared. But they haven't been, and we don't know what's in their document, what's in the documentation, and that will come out in the near future. So, coming back to where we are today. Listen, I'm not going to go into the local development plan 2 this evening because we've done that and we've discussed it at 2 previous meetings and the rights and the wrongs of it. So I think that's out there and for everyone to look back on and there for history, perpetuity and everything else that comes with it. But what I want to speak to and about this evening, Mr. Mayor, is the democratic process and the values of it. And I look up to them standards there. And every time I come in this chamber, I look at them and see what them standards stand for. You know, them are standards of veterans and soldiers who give up their lives for freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of democracy. And that's what makes us different from a lot of countries across this world. A long way to continue. And I think Wrexham has a fantastic history with the military and the history and the heritage. So that should stand for something, and it does, because it's there in this chamber. So, do I believe that democracy is under threat in Wrexham? Absolutely, I do. And I stand here before you all and I say it openly and loudly. Democracy and the law has a place. But in this chamber on 2 occasions, we threw it out. We asked for advice. Councillor Davis said that we were unlawful breaking the law. At their meeting, we asked the legal officer for advice and she made it clear we meant breaking the law. It wasn't unlawful. That's what we said. It's there for perpetuity for everybody to see. So I don't believe that any of us have broke the law to this point. Now, the court case and what the judges made is a different discussion, different debate. But up to now, I want to make it clear that we've taken advice off the monitoring officer and we voted on them issues at that time. And I don't agree with Councillor Davis what she said, that we've acted unlawfully, because I don't believe that's the case. So I come back to the democratic process and why we're here today. If you look at the 56 councillors and the court needs 14 for it to go through this evening. I believe it will go through. But I won't support it. And I'll abstain. And the reason why I'll abstain, because, and this is me as an individual, not as the leader of the council, as an elected member, nobody should come in this chamber. Nobody should come in this chamber and being told how to vote, or intimidation, or concerns, or worries, or threats. And Councillor Malcolm King asked a question, and I'll give him an answer. He said, where have these come from? I've spoken to the Chief Exec, I've spoken to the Chief Officer of Planning, and I've spoken to the Monitoring Officer on this. And the advice I've given the elected members who have come to me, go and speak to the Monitoring Officer, go and make a complaint, and I hope they've done so. And if they've done that, that's fine. And then Councillor Rob Walsh mentioned a witch hunt. And I probably think he's right in describing it that way. It's wrong what's going on within this council. The last 2 votes, if this LDP would have been voted for, I would have respected it. Absolutely, that's what democracy's for. We have differences, we have different opinions, we have different values. Nothing wrong with that at all. but respect the vote after. And this evening, the way the vote goes, I respect it, and I move on. But unfortunately, there is a core of individuals who are driven in this witch hunt, and I don't like it. And I can assure you, I will push back hard against it as an elected member in this chamber, because you always should value how everybody feels and votes on it. My deputy leader has a different opinion from me. I respect it, and I respect him as an individual, and that's fine, nothing wrong with it at all. Councillor Mike Morris, I've known Mike a very long time, he has a different opinion. I respect Councillor Mike Morris' opinion, nothing wrong with that at all. And I respect everybody in this chamber who has a different opinion. But what I would ask is, I'll just finish this there 1 second.
No.
I just hope that everybody,
Councillor Pritchard.
after this vote, respects it and there's no repercussions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Jerry Wellens.
Joke, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't actually going to speak about this issue. I feel that I've changed my mind because the word democracy has been thrown about in a way that I don't recognise. And what I would like to point out a number of things about democracy. First of all, the democratic process is not just what occurs in this chamber. The democratic process is a set of interlinked processes, including legislation, which is scrutinised and challenged at either UK government level or Welsh government level. With our liberal democracy, which, as far as I'm aware, we are still in the UK, as Councillor Williams pointed out, we are actually under obligation to follow laws, and those laws bind our responsibilities under democracy and actually support them as well. So I would just like really to, for the public perception really, not to get carried away by the fact that democracy is only something that happens in this chamber. It really is rather larger than that. And also I would like to point out, in response to Councillor Pritchard, he mentioned threats. There is a difference between pointing out the potential consequences of actions and actually threatening. And I think that's an important distinction because, as Councillor Bates indicated, we need information on which to be able to base our decisions. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Yeah, I'm going to bring you in last. Yeah. The one on the line, Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot's been said, and obviously people have very strong and entrenched views on the local development plan, and more particularly on the processes that we've had to go through. We've heard that there's a place for democracy and the law. Well, whether we like it or not, the law is above the democratic process, and the democratic process operates within the law, and that's how it stands, and that's how it always has done. And that's there to protect everybody, for obvious reasons. I think this is something that we need to move on with. As I said at the outset, there's some things in there that don't sit comfortable with me, but it's much bigger than the housing plan, which Councillor Harper referred to it as. It's not just a housing plan, it covers a whole host of things: transport, shopping, employment. And as I said when we had the no vote in June, if you discount the housing, you then do not need the level of employment land, and we're getting ourselves in difficulties in planning committee because of the uncertainty of not having the plan in place. If we hadn't got the plan in place, we don't have the plan in place, we then can't honestly say that we need the employment land and there's people there waiting to develop the county. And whether we like it or not, we're not here just to let the county stagnate. We're here to see it grow, and we're having investment from the private sector, from the central UK government, to actually move it on. We're not a small village in Wales, we're a county and we're a city now, and to some extent we have to develop and act accordingly on that basis. So I do feel that a lot's been said on this. We do need to grow and not stagnate, and therefore as I say, I'm happy to not only move the recommendations which I did earlier, but also to second the
Okay, thank you. That's all the speakers, so I'm going to bring Linda back up, and then we'll do a recorded vote. So we'll have 10 people to put that recorded vote through. Just wait till Linda comes back. Okay, can I ask 10 people to stand for recorded vote? I think that's, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we've had a seconder and we've done all the speakers. I will now put the recommendations to the vote. All those in... No. Sorry? Sorry, yeah, okay. We'll now go through the vote.
Deal. I'm going to read out the names from my list. Please bear with me. I know that some people aren't here and perhaps have given apologies, so I will just read out as we go through. I'd ask you to just clearly indicate for, against, or abstain when your name is called out. Brian Apsley. You don't need, I didn't say you don't need to stand up each time. For. Thank you. William Baldwin.
Abstain.
Trevor Bates.
I'll abstain as well.
David A. Bithell.
For.
Beryl Blackmore.
Abstain.
Paul Blackwell.
For.
Gary Brown.
For.
Brian Cameron.
For.
Krista Childs. Annette Davis. Not present now. Dana Davis.
For.
Terry Evans.
Abstain.
Frank Hemmings.
For.
Corin Jarvis.
For.
Hugh Jones. He's not present, is he now?
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Abstain.
Apologies. Abstain. Apologies, Councillor Jones. Steve Joe Jones.
For.
Jeremy Kent.
Abstain.
Malcolm King.
For.
Tina Mannering.
Abstain.
Stella Matthews.
For.
John McCusker.
For.
Michael Morris.
For.
Jeremy Newton.
For.
Paul Pemberton.
Abstain.
John Phillips.
For.
John Pritchard.
For.
Mark Pritchard.
Abstain.
Fred Roberts.
For.
Paul Roberts.
For.
Graham Rogers.
For.
Alison Tynan.
For.
Robert Walsh.
Abstain.
Anthony Wedlake.
For.
Jerry Wellens.
For.
Andy Williams.
Abstain.
Robert Ian Williams.
For.
Derek Wright.
For.
Phil Wynn.
For.
Diolch. So just had a...
Okay, that stands 26 for and 11 abstentions. Ali, any again? No, so 26-11. Okay. Okay, that concludes today's business. Can I take this opportunity to wish members and councillors an enjoyable Christmas with Dolly Flowering, and thank you for attending the extraordinary meeting. Thank you.